guides my thoughts and helps me make intelligent decisions. And virtually every religious person that I've ever met in my life believes in the power of prayer and believes that when they pray, God hears them. I, for one, am learning, even through this process, that God still speaks. And while I do not know precisely how that happens, I don't know. And I certainly can't describe it to you scientifically. Nevertheless, as clearly as I can discern God's voice, over a period of many years, it became abundantly clear to me that if I were to be called faithful as a Christian follower, random designer is something that I had to do. So here we are. There were nights I remember when I would be thinking about these things and my wife would just give me an elbow and it was way past go to sleep time. Saying, "What's the matter with you?" Moving times for me because the answer was very clear. I said, "I've got to write it. I've just got to write it." So I've written it. There's a lot of information that I'd like to communicate with you today, but in the short time that we have together during these sessions, it's just not possible. Therefore, before I get into the substantive content of Random Designer, I have just one main question that I'd like for us to consider. Is it possible that our vision of the Creator God is too small? Is it possible that our vision of the Creator God is too small? Generally thinking, I believe that it is. And I'd like to share with you many of the things that I'm learning that allow me to reach that conclusion. But in order for me to provide that perspective, I think I need to just sort of diverge for a few moments. In the summer of 1905, an obscure patent clerk, recently turned physicist, radically changed the world with one mathematics equation. You all know what it was. E equals mc squared. With this simple but ultimately profound statement, Albert Einstein defined the basic elements of relativity, showing that matter and energy were really just different forms of the same thing. The ramifications of this revolutionary concept were enormous, ultimately sowing the seeds for the nuclear age that would follow in the 1930s and in the 1940s. Einstein summed up his relativity equation with one clear statement. He said, "Alles ist relativ." He was Deutsch. All is relative. Today I'd like to share with you another maxim, one that is changing the way that I view the world and also changing the way that I view God. Alles ist Zufallscharakter. All is randomness. No doubt for some such a statement is bound to raise a few eyebrows. But before you rise up and cry heresy, I encourage your indulgence for just a bit. You see, just as there is more to Einstein's relativity statement than meets the casual eye, there is also much, much more to this concept, all is randomness. In fact, I believe that it has God's fingerprints all over it. In all my years as a scientist studying the nature of life, one thing has become vividly apparent to me. There's also much more to life than meets the eye. We used to describe life in terms of what we saw outwardly, and then along came the microscope, and then we could see life in a whole different perspective. And since that time has come molecular biology and genetics and atomic physics. And now we have the ability to see life in ways that we've never seen it before. Life is really organized in layers. There's the surface, what we can see, and if you look and your scientists pull that back, what you discover is another whole reality underneath of that. And you peel that one back and there's another one. And then there's another one. Layer upon layer upon layer of incredible, mind-boggling organization. A design within a design within a design, all integrated both horizontally and vertically. Now, I realize this is a lot to take in, but I need to talk about this concept of randomness for a few moments, because in my view, it's a term that carries a great deal of undeserved negative baggage. When you think of randomness, does it conjure up positive or negative thoughts in your mind? I know the answer. Most of us would attach at least a slight negative tone to it. It was just coincidence. It was just chance. The students' results and answers on the microbiology exam were random. And then for some students, that's an improvement. Or I wonder how you would feel if you discovered that the house that was being built for you was being assembled randomly. But is it possible that random events might occasionally produce a positive outcome? The truth is that in a world that places a great deal of value on rules and organization and structure and order, it is difficult to personally embrace physical laws of our existence that embody an element of chaos. It's hard. But to a large extent, randomness really does govern our lives in many ways. For example, at your very beginnings, was it by design or was it by chance that this one single sperm swimming among millions happened to collide with your mother's egg to produce this individual called you? Incredibly unique individual called you. The odds of producing another individual just like you genetically, even from the same parents, are easily greater than 1 in a trillion. Now, many people take very great comfort in that because they have a sibling they don't like very much. They can take great comfort in knowing that genetically they really probably are different. What about the sun's nuclear fusion reactions? Fusion reactions are, think about it, it's chaos up there. Just explosion after explosion after explosion, and the energy and the light and the heat being radiated, and over 93 million miles in just a few minutes, it hits us. How did that happen? I think you know the answer. Randomness, the tendency to move from high concentration to low concentration, a fundamental law of our universe. And then what about this? Mountain Dew can. Mike, can you tell me how much sugar's in there?
46 grams.
Good. 46 grams of sugar. That's about, I'm going to depress you now here. That's about 1/10 of a pound of pure, unadulterated sugar beet or cane sugar. So we drink this can of soda, and the sugar goes into the stomach and is distributed completely and evenly throughout the body. How does that happen? And what happens if it doesn't happen? You see, each of us have about 100 trillion cells that are just waiting for that sugar to get there because it needs it to survive. What happens if it doesn't distribute randomly? It goes to only some of the cells and not the others. Once again, it's the laws of randomness that make things happen. Or consider the millions of biochemical reactions that are occurring within each of our cells, and we have 100 trillion cells. Millions of reactions occurring within these cells right now within each one of us. Fundamentally, and in unexpected ways, it is actually the laws of randomness that fuel these processes and impart to these cells the most amazing characteristic of all, the characteristic of life. Life is chemistry.